go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. We're pleased to have Maureen Mulvihill today. She is CEO of Actuated Medical. We will go ahead and begin with around a 30-minute presentation, and then we will host our Q&A. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat for Q&A later. So, welcome, Maureen.
Hey, thank you so much. Hi, my name is Maureen Mulvihill, and I'm President and CEO of Actuated Medical. And before I get started, I want to introduce a couple of my team members. Roger, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Roger Bagwell. I'm Director of Neural Device Operations and also one of the co-founders. So I lead our efforts to really transform how we insert and maintain tiny little neural implants into the brain so that we can treat these debilitating neurological conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. I also have our Director of Quality Assurance and Regulatory Affairs, Doug Dillon's on the call, and our Director of Manufacturing, Ian Charney, is on the call, and Abby DeLellis, who is our Clinical Education Leader. So I just want to start off. Hi, I lead a team that is transforming tools for brain access and deep brain therapy delivery to treat debilitating neurological conditions. And we do have a term sheet and a due diligence report available from Keiretsu Mid-Atlantic. About 10 million people worldwide are candidates for deep brain stimulation probe placements. These probes have been used for over 20 years to treat Parkinson's, and it's also FDA approved to treat epilepsy, tremors, and OCD, and it's under clinical evaluation to treat depression. These probes have to travel deep into the brain and hit a target the size of a small olive. This is Anne Marie. She's had a DBS probe for over 17 years to treat her Parkinson's. When I met her, I said, "Wow, you're one of the first people to receive this technology. Why did you do it?" She said she wanted to be around to play with her grandkids, but she also mentioned the very first probe missed the target and required her to have a second brain surgery. As these probes travel deep into the brain, as you can see from the illustrations on the right, they often divert or deflect as they go through different tissue layers. And if they deflect by more than 1.5 millimeters, these patients often have to have a second brain surgery. It happens 3 to 8% of the time, or 1 in 20 patients. So when they have a revision surgery, we're talking about the patient has anxiety, there's complication risks. But for the neurosurgeon, it's the bane of their existence. They don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to have to redo the surgery, but it happens 3 to 8% of the time. Actually, about 80% of the time, these probes are placed and they bend on the way. And if they bend significantly, then there's off-target effects. For the hospital, they have to pay for that revision surgery. They have to worry about those complication risks. And they also plan one procedure a day. If we could improve that success rate, then maybe they can plan for 2 procedures a day and we can help more patients. The way that electrodes are inserted, and this is actually a very flexible next generation probe. And you can see with the standard insertion, they just push down on the probe and it actually dimples and it deflects in the tissue. And you can see that the probe itself just bends and doesn't really go in. This is a more stiff probe and it's a next generation probe also. And you can see that the tissue just dimples and all of a sudden it pops through. And that pop through is causing significant tissue damage. And as this electrode is being removed, you can also see that the tissue is grabbed along the side of the probe. But with our neuroglider inserter, we're using ultrasonic micro motions and we're inserting these probes with greater precision and less tissue trauma. So as you can see from the comparison video with neuroglider, we go into the tissue, we hit the target, and we have less bending of these probes. The technology was developed using about $18 million in non-dilutive capital by DARPA and NIH. We've already sold it into 39 brain research labs, and those researchers are now publishing the work. They're building the science so we can transition to the clinic. There's also 16 patents and 12 pending patents that support our technology and our innovation. Our partners at University of North Carolina were able to insert a DBS probe to target with less tissue trauma using NeuroGlider. And Dr. Lee stated, NeuroGlider helped us to get better outcomes in our DBS study. We got higher accuracy of electrode placement and reliable responses. We can also use this technology to inject to deep brain targets, and that would be for treatments for cancer, could be gene therapy or addiction treatment. Our partners at Oregon Health were able to use NeuroGlider to insert needles to deep brain targets and deliver gene therapy viral vectors. They also showed that the injection in the insertion site had healthier neurons using NeuroGlider. They had greater precision, but the key point here is they were able to use a smaller diameter needle, which meant the tract was a smaller diameter. So as they removed that needle from the tissue, they had less drugs wicking back up that channel. So they had less drug loss, which is key to this technology. We are not changing the way neurosurgeons are doing this procedure. We are in the standard workflow. We are just oscillating the cannula on the way in, and we're oscillating the cannula on the way out. It'll be a 510(k) pathway where the predicate will be the cannula, and we'll have a reference device for this oscillation. Our first in-man study will be at Jefferson University in Philadelphia with Dr. Wu. And Dr. Wu is the one who wrote the paper that we found about a year ago that talked about that miss rate of that 3 to 8% where they have to have that revision surgery. In our interactions with him, by the fourth time or the fourth conversation we had with him, I asked him to join our medical advisory board. And I'm happy to say recently he joined our medical advisory board. We can look at this as being our competitors. Our competitors are manual cannulas, they're robotics companies, or they're stereotaxic frames. But each of these competitors still has the tissue damage problem and the off-target placement problems that NeuroGlider solves. So let's flip this story and let's switch this to one of these as a potential licensee of our technology. And by licensing NeuroGlider, they'll have improved outcomes, which will give them product differentiation across the other four. We've spoken to multiple doctors and multiple clinical researchers, and we hear the same thing: improve insertion, improve delivery, which is what NeuroGlider does. We've sold this into 39 brain research labs, and here's a lot of the little logos of people that are using NeuroGlider right now, and a lot of logos from those people that are evaluating it right now. We have about $500,000 in early sales in this global research market. Our business model, a value prop, is NeuroGlider enhances placement accuracy and minimizes tissue damage, significantly improving first-time brain surgery success. Our first revenue stream is continuing those research sales. They are profitable. Those researchers are building our science and they're building our awareness. And if we look at the fact that there's 3,000 brain research labs and we have our distributors selling, it's potential of a $36 million revenue stream. We already have 4 signed exclusive distributor agreements right now that are selling worldwide for us. Our goal then on the clinical side is to develop the technology or optimize the technology for a single-use device that we would then license out for specific electrode designs and specific therapeutics. So we have multiple licensing opportunities with the technology. The idea is once it's licensed, then we would sell the single-use NeuroGlider component to each of them, and they would be the ones selling into the hospitals. If we just look at the total market for DBS, we're estimating about 24 million per year. And if we look at cancer biologics for glioblastoma, we're talking about $23 million per year also. But this is also a growing market as we have gene therapy infusions and also brain-computer interface systems that have insertion issues. We also have 2 technologies that are FDA cleared and patented that we're planning to sell off. So we have interim liquidity events. And with those, we would, by selling them off, reinvesting those profits back into the company, we minimize future round shareholder dilution. We also have the profits being fueling our growth. And then we also plan to give dividends to our investors. This is a quote by Mira from Keiretsu in Canada after she saw me pitch. And she said, just as American Tower built a critical infrastructure that powered the mobile phone revolution, I see Actuated Medical's NeuroGlider technology as the foundational platform that enables all players in the neural probe space to safely and effectively access the brain for improved outcomes. So what happened here is American Tower rented their towers to multiple different cell phone companies, and they were able to expand tremendously. And the cell phone industry was able to expand tremendously. Our neuroglider already is helping brain-computer interface companies with insertion problems. We're helping to deliver those biologics, and we're working with next generation probes to get them in more effectively. On the BCI front, we are working with Jefferson University as our first in-man study, but we actually are working with a current brain-computer interface company that's having insertion problems, and we're going to help them. On the deep biologics, we are already working with a non-human primate model showing that with neuroglider, they're getting better outcomes. And for the next generation probes, we have significant work going on in the human space, the non-human space, and the lab space. Roger, do you want to talk about all the exciting things happening right now in the next generation probe area?
Yeah, so one of the most exciting things is that picture up in the upper right where there's a little probe on a finger. That's a tiny probe, it's kind of the buzz of the neuroscience world. Has 5,000 channels of recording capability. You have 80 billion neurons in your brain, and the goal with all these is to get as close as possible to as many neurons as you can so you can record or provide a feedback loop of some sort for a brain-computer interface. So what we've got is a lot of people trying to use using neuroglider because those probes are very fragile to get them inserted, and then we've got a couple groups that are starting to insert them into humans to evaluate human brain function. Similarly, with the University of Southern California has developed their own super flexible little probe that's less irritating to the body than a stiffer probe, but they're very difficult to insert. So what they, as Maureen showed in the one video, so they actually were able to insert using neuroglider for the first time ever without a stiffener or a shuttle. They were able to insert into a gel model of tissue, and we're very excited about that as well.
Do you want to talk about the California-based researcher?
Yeah, sure. There's actually another group that's essentially in the process of renting a neuroglider to evaluate. And what they do is they put in those neuropixels into human studies or into human patients where the tissue is going to be excised. So they're studying human brain and somebody who's having the tissue removed later due to epilepsy. So they don't have to worry about biocompatibility of their probes and things like that. But they break these probes all the time. It's obviously not great for the patients, and it's very expensive for each probe being $5,000. So it's a neat pathway for a lot of additional compelling data for us, and also a first in human use of neuroglider.
Great. And then I did mention the BCI company. Do you want to talk about the competitor, which is known as the brain basher?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. So some of these high density probes are very hard to insert because they're like a bed of nails. The one that's FDA cleared right now for use in the brain is essentially a bed of a 10 by 10 array that are very closely spaced. And the way they insert this right now is they open up your head and put this $50,000 implant up next to your brain, and then they whack it with a pneumatic hammer to make sure it goes in. And that's the only reliable way to get in. So we propose, and we're working with them and some testing partners on using neuroglider to gently place these dense probes into your delicate cortical tissue.
Thank you. For the Series A, we're broken up into three strategic focus areas. The first is improving brain probe first-time success, with the DBS probe will be our first market or proving ground. And then enhancing deep brain biologic delivery using those smaller cannulas. And our first indication will be for brain cancer biologic delivery. And of course, we'll continue expanding compatibility with the next generation probes because they're building our science, they're building our awareness, and they're introducing us to potential clinical needs or clinical indications. Our Series A is broken up into three timelines. We're talking about the next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, sales, clinical optimization of the technology, and of course, working capital. Our pre-money valuation is at $25 million. And if we look at industry comparables for neuroglider, they range between 18 million and 94 million. And the median is that 25 million, which supports our pre-money valuation. But for the investors, we have a couple other things that really enhance this opportunity. We've brought in over $50 million in non-dilutive capital, and that has built our intellectual property portfolio. We have 45 issued patents, and we actually have 9 510K clearances under our belt. And we have an ISO 13485 20,000 square foot facility that we do from development all the way to manufacturing. So we control our manufacturing processes. We also have 2 assets that we plan to sell off in the next 12 months and reinvest those profits back into the company to continue fueling our growth as well as giving out some shareholder dividends. Our timeline for a return to our investors, we have significant early traction. We're in 39 brain research labs. There's 43 publications that cite NeuroGlider. We have about $500,000 in early sales. With the $10 billion Series A, we're going to, of course, continue those profitable preclinical sales and at the same time optimize NeuroGlider for a single-use device for our first-in-man study at Jefferson and then a first-in-man study for injection. We're also looking to do a first 510K, and Doug is on the line and he can talk about a regulatory plan in a moment. We have those two assets that we plan to sell off. And then, of course, the company, we look to license off NeuroGlider inserter for specific biologics and NeuroGlider inserter for specific electrodes and NeuroGlider injector for certain biologics. We're looking to sell the company at about 5 years and looking at an 8 to 10x ROI for our Series A investors. Potential acquirers could be a robotics company, a DBS stakeholder, or a therapeutics company. Doug, since you're on, can you come off mute and talk about the regulatory strategy? Because I have 3 of them listed here. Why are we doing 3 510Ks?
Sure. So we're building that basically as a minimally viable product, something to get out there in the market right away. That would be the first in human studies and the first 510K. But what we really need, if you want to be able to make claims regarding accuracy, improving improving the accuracy of the insertions and reducing the number of repeat surgeries, then we're going to need a clinical study, and so we'll need a pretty large clinical study. And so that will be basically using our initial device as the predicate and then making specific marketing claims. That'll be the second and third products.
All right, thank you very much. Our financial projections are based on sales revenue and licensing revenue. We look to be cash positive in 2028, and we look to exit the company in 2030. Our team has the leadership to execute this 5-year plan. As I said, we have about 50 interactions with the FDA, resulting in 9 510K clearances, 8 clinical studies, many IDEs and whatnot. So we have the experience to move this plan forward. We have an advisory board that has the expertise in monetizing assets, and we have a highly engaged team that is focused on improving patient outcomes. We have a board of directors of 5 people and a medical advisory board with neuroscience or neuro surgery expertise. And we have a 20,000 square foot facility. Ian, I see you're on. Can you come off and talk about our facility and the manufacturing and meeting our goals of the sales projections?
Sure. So we have the vast majority of our manufacturing is done in-house. There are a few kind of select operations, PCBs and stuff that we do out of house. But currently, to support all of our FDA-cleared devices as well as our research devices, all of that manufacturing is done in-house. We have a fully operating machine shop on site, so we're able to control all of our processes there. And then all of our assembly is done in a controlled environment that we have on site. So right now we are not making full use of the manufacturing space that we have. We have a lot more space than we need. And then so we have room to expand what we do in that space. And then we also have additional kind of flex space right outside of that room that would probably more than triple our physical footprint. So we have the space to expand our manufacturing capabilities a lot beyond what we do right now to meet our goals.
Thank you. We are transforming tools for brain access and therapy delivery and treating debilitating neural conditions. We're looking at an 8 to 10x ROI for our Series A investors. We are seeking a $10 million Series A. They are participating preferred shares at a $25 million pre-money. The minimum check size is $25,000. We have about $540,000 invested to date, and we are a QSBS entity structure. We have those assets that we're planning to sell off in the next 12 months, 12 to 24 months, and reinvest that back into the company to continue fueling growth to minimize the need for shareholder further dilution. This is a Keiretsu term sheet from Howard Lubert. I don't know if anyone here knows Howard, but in his term sheet, he always has three tranches. And the idea is each of those tranches has a discounted warrants. And so what that means is to get early investment, if you invest in the first tranche, which is that first 1.5, then the pre-money valuation is around 22 million. So those warrants reduce the pre-money. That second tranche, so that second 3.5 million, the valuation is about 23 million. And then that third tranche is about 24 million. So by investing early, you get a much better pre-money valuation. We also have that term sheet from Keiretsu and due diligence reports that are available. And we have a deep dive scheduled for next Wednesday at 12 o'clock noon that you can register. So if you just take this QR code down, then you can register for that. And you can also see a lot of information about our Series A program. Does anyone have any questions? We'll look forward to any questions.
Thank you so much, Maureen. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. You can also DM me privately. We did get a few questions in, so we can go ahead and start our Q&A session. All right, so first there's, how was the 50 million in non-dilutive capital spent?
So the 50 million is over probably about a 10-year period. And so it averaged about 3 million per year. And that enabled us to build our intellectual property portfolio. We started off looking at devices that had a motion component. And the first product we got to the market is the tube clear system. So that was about 5 million of that. Our second product that's FDA cleared is GripTrack, and that's going into clinical studies at Cleveland Clinic, and that's probably another 5 million. The neuroglider was developed. We started looking at epidural insertion, we looked at spinal insertion, and we looked at bone biopsy. And then DARPA found us and said, can you put electrodes into the brain? And so that's about 18 million. We also did some really innovative projects for the DoD and NASA where we developed some 3D printing capabilities for them. They're not really customers that build sales, but we delivered those products and successfully completed those projects. We also have a couple other products that are at various stages of development that are just kind of sitting there that we may sell off those assets at some point also.
Great, thank you. All right, next question. How many investors do you have in the cap table right now? How many are US based?
So in the cap table, on common shareholders, there's probably about 30. We gave to some employees. We have some for board members. One of those is non-US. It's a UK company. They own probably about 1%. They were an early investor. They came in on the friends and family round. For the Series A investors, there's about 10 so far that make up that $540,000. They're all US citizens. So I think on my cap table, only one is non-US, and that is a UK company and the UK CEO of that company. So there's two, I guess. One's a company and one's an individual, but they're both from England.
Great. All right, next question. How does your technology integrates with the current ROSA robot or future AIM medical robotics technologies?
I'm going to let Roger answer that question. If you come off mute, Roger.
Yeah, sure. We think particularly for the Rosa robot, and we're trying to establish a relationship there. We think it's a very easy fit into the way their robot grips different tools and the guidance system that it uses. And we can essentially use that type of vibrating technology to penetrate different tissue layers as you're inserting a sharp and hit the target much more accurately on the first try. The AIM robotic system we're a little less familiar with, but from what I've seen of it, I think it would work very well in that system also, either as an additional tool that you would incorporate or integrate it fully into the system.
Great, thank you, Roger. Really quick, before we continue the questions, I'm going to go ahead and open up the poll. All right, I just launched it, and I will give that about 5 minutes or so. So go ahead and feel free to answer that poll, and then we can go on to the next question. Is your technology MRI compatible? Can it be used with ClearPoint?
I'm going to say yes, it is MR compatible, but I'm also going to hand that back to Roger too as our Director of Neural Device Operations.
Yeah, sure. It definitely is MRI compatible. It's piezoelectric driven, so there's nothing inherently not MRI compatible with it. We've actually looked at ClearPoint quite a lot because it's a really slick system for guiding in different cannula into a target with a lot of feedback loops and surgical planning. We think we can further improve that, yes, but with integration of a pretty simple version of NeuroGlider and improve essentially the tissue penetration again as the different cannula tips, particularly thin cannula go through different tissue layers and have an inherent tendency to like deflect on the way in.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Next question, one technical, one financial. Do you see traction in stem L delivery for those transplanting cells, for example, in Parkinson's?
I'm going to hand that back to Roger too. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Roger.
Yeah, actually, I think that's our big win right there. And Maureen talked about this a little bit. Is DBS probe insertion for Parkinson's is a little bit, well, it's an amazing market, but it's a little bit fixed. Where I think the stem cell delivery into different targets in the brain, absolutely, you need to hit the target accurately with the smallest cannula possible. And so when you're talking about a cannula that's 33 gauge or about 0.2 millimeters in diameter, they deflect quite a lot as they go through different tissue layers. Sometimes if you're delivering to a whole area of the brain, it's not as critical, but if you're trying to seed a specific area or a tract along a specific structure in the brain, you absolutely need to be in the right spot. And so we think that's a big, big play down the road.
Great. Next question. Foreign investors is something Actuated looking for?
I'm sorry.
Latam, I'm guessing is foreign investors something Actuated is looking for?
We would be glad to talk to somebody if they're outside of the US and they want to invest in Actuated. We actually are talking to a couple from JPM. So yes, we would not be against that. In a certain sense, one of the investors I talked to was interested in our manufacturing and could we manufacture parts for them so they could have things made in America. So that was kind of an interesting conversation. But yes, we would definitely like to talk to you.
Great, thank you. Next question. If you only raise your first tranche, do you have sufficient cash to make it through 2026?
The first tranche, that first 1.5 million, we will get very close because we actually have some partner projects and we actually have another SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research Grant, that'll be like year 3, and that comes in June. So with those 3 different funding pools together, yes, we would make it to the end of the year.
Great, thank you, Maureen. All right, another question. You were incorporated in 2006. Why are you raising the Series A now?
Well, we started off in the beginning and we were innovating and we were looking at different products and we started from concept. So it takes a long time to develop a product. And so with NeuroGlider, we started looking at epidurals and we looked at spinals and then we found the need in the brain implant space. And so we have a first mover advantage. We have 39 labs using it where there's the 43 publications. So the time is now to get commercial funding in with this SBIRs. We've had that 50 million. You can't use that for commercial activities. So we need equity investment to commercialize NeuroGlider and hit our 5-year exit goal.
Great, thank you. All right, next question. Explain how the non-neural asset sell-off will minimize future round shareholder dilution.
Yeah, so if I go back to this one slide, well, this one. Okay. So if you look at the 2 assets, so GripTrack, if you look at the percentiles, so we're saying the value of it's between 7 million and 19 million. We go median is about $9 million. Or GripTrack, you're looking at between 4 and 9, so 6 is your median. So by selling those off in the next 12 to 24 months, we reinvest, we'll say the 9 million back in, or reinvest the 6 million back in. We won't need a Series B. We have the profits from selling the products, the research products, and then we have these 2 assets coming in. And that's the reason for not needing to have a Series B because we have this other cash coming in to fuel our growth.
Thank you, Maureen. All right, last chance for the poll. I'm going to go ahead and close that in about 30 seconds or so. So if you haven't responded, please respond to that poll. And then we do have a few more questions left. Let's see. Can you help us understand how your device will reduce the time for DBS procedure? Can you indicate where the procedure workflow, the time savings are coming from?
Yes, Roger, I'm going to hand that one back to you too.
Yeah, sure. From the customer discovery we've done, the procedure itself, the insertion is actually fairly quick. What they worry about is if they have to reposition. And that's where they go in and they may have to save. So if everything goes right in the first insertion, then we wouldn't have much of an effect on that timing. It's going in with the confidence that you know you're going to hit the first time when you go in and not have to back up and reposition and do things like that. So the one doctor we spoke to said, if you could, they really scheduled just one a day because it could be a 2.5 to 3 hour procedure, or it could be 5 or 6, depending on how things go. So if you have that confidence, that's really where we see the savings on in the workflow and the time is the confidence knowing you're going to hit the first time, and then you could potentially schedule 2 procedures a day.
Thank you, Roger. Next question, where are you in the sale of the current developed technologies?
Yes, so the reusable research neuroglider is already on the market. It has been sold into over 39 brain research labs globally. That was that slide where I showed a lot of the logos. Let me see, I'm going the wrong way. So it's already a sellable product. We're already making revenue from it. It's actually the profit margin is about 75% profit margin when we sell direct. But we have 4 distributors, and when they sell it so we sell it to them. So our profit margin is about 65%. So the product is already on the market.
Great, thank you, Maureen. Next question, what is your timing on the liquidity events you project?
Yes. So right now for TubeClear, I have 2 companies looking at it. Let me see if I can get to that one slide one more time. Yeah. So right now I have 2 companies looking at GripTrack, or 2 companies looking at TubeClear right now. They're looking to do a spin out. They're looking to give us a significant amount of equity, and then they would sell it off in about 24 months, or 2 to 3 years, right? On GripTrack, we have 3 companies looking at it right now. They're waiting for the clinical data that's coming out of Cleveland Clinic. Once they get that data, I think we'll be selling it off within that 24-month period also. I actually spoke to the PI just recently and asked him if he would do 3 or 4 patients ahead of time so that he could give clinical feedback earlier than waiting for that study to end. So we're really trying to accelerate the sell-off time for the GripTrack device.
Thank you, Maureen. Explain your regulatory pathway.
Doug, you are on the call. Do you want to walk through that? I do have your slide I'll get to in a second.
Sure. So we did have a pre-sub already with the FDA. Remember Roger was talking about the Utah Black Rock Way. We went to the FDA a couple of years ago and had a discussion with them regarding a path to market for that intended use. So it's basically very similar to that. I think we're going to use the same predicate, which is the FHC star drive will be the predicate. We're putting together a pre-sub right now. So that will mainly to get some animal study data that will provide support for basically the minimally viable product, which allows us to go to market with kind of generic intended use, and will also provide the feasibility information we need to get the breakthrough designation, the TAP request, and start working through that IDE for the clinical study. Like I said before, we'll have basically a minimally viable product out on the market, and if we want those claims where we're talking about specific electrodes in specific areas or improvements in accuracy, then that would be a generation 2 product where we have built on the original 510(k) predicate of our minimally viable product.
Thank you, Doug.
Sure.
A few more questions here. What is your go-to market strategy?
Yes. So the first one is going through with the research sales. We are looking to continue selling it into the research lab space. I'm getting to that slide. We have the 4 distributors already. They are already selling the product for us. And then, of course, we do a lot of conferences where we present the technology and interact with clinicians. And we usually are researchers and we come home with about 100 leads from each of those conferences. The part on the clinical side for NeuroGlider, that single-use device, we are already starting to engage with strategics. We're already starting to engage with companies that would be interested in potentially putting it into their systems, where those would be those licensing exits that I talk about. So our go-to strategy for the clinical one is we're engaging with strategics now, getting them excited so that as we get the FDA clearance, they'll put it into their systems.
Great, thank you. With your K4 term sheet, your BOD changes. What types of expertise are you seeking for your BOD?
So we have 3 positions open on the board for the Series A investors. Well, 2 Series A and 1 independent. So that independent will be a neurosurgeon or somebody in the neuro space that perhaps has exited a company. We've already talked to one gentleman who just exited a company. We'd love to make him be that independent. For those 2 Series A, we would like sales, marketing, commercialization expertise in both of those, or sales, marketing, and then experience selling off products. So that whole M&A piece. So it's either the commercial side or the selling off, or what those 2 positions would be. And then, like I said, the independent would be somebody in the neuro space that's exited a company.
Great. You have both preclinical sales and a clinical path planned. Discuss how these fit together.
Yeah, so for the preclinical, they as these sales increase, they're building our science and they're building our awareness, and they're actually a nice profitable revenue stream to continue fueling our growth. At the same time, those interactions are introducing clinicians that have issues. They're finding out about us and they're coming to us about using their technology in their clinical. And that one surgeon in California is key for that. Like, he just found us a couple weeks ago and now he wants to use NeuroGlider in his experiments. So really those research sales are filling our queue into customers that would want to use NeuroGlider in their clinical experiments and in their clinical systems. So that's how they kind of work together. Roger, do you want to make any more comments to that? I know it's a big part of our strategy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So we're starting to get, as we mentioned earlier, people using in research models, but in humans, putting in these delicate neural pixel probes into targets, and I think that gives us a sale in the preclinical world. Obviously, preclinical are not the big wow for exiting for a return on investment to investors, but it's getting people aware of what we can do and how critical our technology is, and we're going to continue that with our essentially deliver of biologics and other markets that we've talked about, and continue building awareness.
Yeah, I think what we have is we have a first mover advantage. I think I already mentioned that. So we have a first mover advantage. Our competition is pneumatic, which is high force. It's causing tissue damage. Things aren't getting to target. And here we can show that we are getting to target. We're having higher precision and we're having less tissue trauma. And so all of these research sales are building that. So those publications where there's the 43 publications that cite NeuroGlider, people are out there saying, oh, such and such used it. Oh, such and such used it. And then they're coming to us because these key opinion leaders are using the technology.
Thank you, Maureen and Roger. All right, this is going to be a last chance for any questions that are coming in. We do have just a few more, but if you have a question, please go ahead and put that in the chat or DM me now. All right, what recent clinical traction have you had?
So that goes to one, we have a brain-computer interface company that has an insertion problem. They've come to us and they're looking to purchase the NeuroGlider on the research side to put it into some of their experiments. We have that California person. Let me see if I got it all here right. So I think we have circled. So we have that California-based world leader that is placing neural pixel probes, and he wants to use it in his studies for epilepsy. And then there's a group at Harvard MGH that is also doing similar work where they want to use NeuroGlider in their clinical studies. But with the Series A funding, we get to that first-in-man study with Jefferson. Dr. Wu has already budgeted this study. We know how much it's going to cost. That's where his enthusiasm level is we're moving the paperwork through to get that study as soon as we get the funding.
Great. All right, last question. What are your plans for use of proceeds for the first 1.5 million tranche, second 3.5 million tranche, and third 5 million tranche?
Yeah, so I have a slide on that because that's a lot of words.
Yes.
So anyway, with that 1.5 million, we're looking at doing the V&V for the NeuroGlider single-use device. We're looking at designing that optimization for the workflow, the IACUC submissions, the IRB prep, that pre-submission that Doug already mentioned, and of course, building NeuroGlider injector. We have a non-human primate study at Oregon Health, a second one that should be starting any moment. We're building equipment for that right now so they can do that study. On that second tranche, we're going to hire an executive salesperson to really move those research sales forward. And of course, building inventory, running that non-human primate study, a large, like a sheep study for that 510K that we need to submit, and of course, do that first-in-man study at Jefferson. With the third tranche, we want to hire some more manufacturing people, some neuroscientists, and we want to scale up manufacturing. At that moment, Grip Track will be sold off, probably tube clear. And then, of course, we'll do 2 more 510Ks. And then, of course, continue doing the research sales.
All right. Thank you so much, Maureen. If anyone else has a question, feel free to hop in and ask. Otherwise, I think we are all set to go. I want to thank Maureen and the Actuated team here. That was a great presentation. It was recorded, and we will be sending that recording out, so please look out for that. And I think we're all set to go. Is there anything else you would like to add, Maureen?
No, I want to thank everyone for their time. Like I said, we do have a deep dive scheduled for this Wednesday or Wednesday the 18th at noon. There is a QR code, or you just feel free to email me and I can send you the registration link. And I said the term sheet and the due diligence report are both available on that same QR code if you just want to scan it. I think the exciting part here is that first mover advantage that we have where we can make a difference in brain health and improve those outcomes. But I want to thank everyone for coming and appreciate all your time. I look forward to talking to you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.